lesion is just a general term. So a skin lesion is any abnormality on the skin. Now, ideally, skin is meant to be flat and smooth. So skin lesions are things like moles, skin tags, hemangiomas, birthmarks, seborrheic keratoses, solar keratoses, xanthomas, which are the little kind of fatty deposits often seen up here around the eyes. So, and it kind of goes on and on. So there's many different classes of skin lesions. And so the treatment that I offer, which I learned from Dr. Teleren that he developed, is applying a specific compound. It's an acidic compound that it's so simple. We just apply it topically. It's very precise using a toothpick. And what it does is upon contact with the lesion, the solution, it constricts it. And in constricting the lesion, it's cutting off its nutrient supply. So it's isolating the lesion. It cuts it off from the rest of the skin. And then what will happen is that lesion then scabs up and it's able to just fall off. And so this is a way that we're able to really, really precisely treat any of these lesions. And it's amazing the array of different things that can be treated. It's also very safe to treat because it's so precise and because it constricts and isolates. It's not spreading. We can treat in very sensitive areas. So we can treat in mucous membranes.
Wow.
We can treat inside the mouth, the lips. We can treat on the inside of the eyelid, which is, we can treat on top of the eyelid. These are places where they're actually quite common for getting different types of lesions. Skin tags can often form. Sometimes, basal cell carcinoma, different cancerous lesions can form up here.
Okay.
Well, if you're going to a traditional doctor, and the tools that they use to remove those lesions are freezing them, cutting them. They're oftentimes, if it's in a sensitive area, they're not going to touch it.
Right.
Because that's not an area where you can perform surgery. You can't cut on the eyelid because there's nothing left. There'd be nothing left to stitch up. So this really gives us the ability to treat lesions that aren't accessible by other means.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, are there any possibilities for scarring or anything like
There's
that?
always a possibility for scarring, although over treating tens of thousands of patients with this, we find that it's minimally scarring and oftentimes no scars whatsoever. Now, we get the best results on the face and the scalp, of course, because that's where there's the most circulation in the skin. And so oftentimes I'll treat patients, remove sometimes very large moles somewhere on the face or other types of lesions. They'll come back for a follow-up in 3 or 4 months, and we can't find where it was. So I'm asking, let's check in and see how it's doing. Well, they're like, I think it was some here on the cheek, and oftentimes, it really is phenomenal sometimes. It's not always that way,
Right,
and
sure.
sometimes it requires multiple treatments, which brings me to one of the other real benefits of this is that we can really see what we're doing. And so after we remove a layer of tissue, we can see what's left. And so there's a tendency, the skin always grows from this basal layer up, and it takes about a month for a cell to complete that whole journey, the basal layer of the epidermis to go all the way up and then slough off. And so if lesions oftentimes will penetrate deeper, and so once we've removed the outer layer, if there's roots, we can see them. Once the scab falls off, we can see if there's anything left, and that we can retreat that.
Wow.
Now, if you're using surgery to remove it, you're just guessing. You're just guessing on depth, and that's why you'll often see people who go in, they have a small lesion to go in to have it surgically removed, and then they come out and they have a huge scar because, the doctor's just guessing, and if it is cancerous, potentially perhaps they've identified that with biopsy or they can tell through the visual signs, then they want to make sure that they get it all. And so they have one shot at it, and so they're going to really take a lot of tissue. This allows us to be very precise in the application. If we need to treat it again, no problem. It creates minimal inflammation because we're constricting it. And as you know, inflammation is fuel for cancer. And, and so cutting into a place that's potentially cancerous is like pouring gasoline on a fire. And so you never want to create more inflammation in the treatment of cancer anywhere in the body.
Right.
Try and really
rein it in.
Rein it in.
Yeah.
So that's the basics of it. In addition to lesions that are potentially cancerous, we treat all types of lesions because the smoother that our skin is, the flatter it is, the healthier that our nervous system is of a whole. And this gets back to the fact that I talked about right at the beginning, that the skin and the nervous system, they come from the same primordial tissue when we're in utero, in the embryologic stage. And so they're intimately connected. And so if we're peppered with skin lesions, even if they're not malignant or cancerous, they're still creating at least some amount of neurologic irritation. And when we start to remove these lesions, we find sometimes very surprisingly how the health can really improve in the patient simply by removing these lesions and restoring the skin to this, to this smooth and, better functioning organ.
Absolutely, absolutely fascinating. It's amazing. The human body is incredible.